Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final major chess event of 2021, the World Blitz Championship, being held once again in Warsaw, in Poland, in Warsaw. It's a 21-round event in the open section. I believe the women's section is 17 rounds, and it's all over 2 days. 3 minutes with 2 seconds bonus, and it's just an open, it's a free-for-all. It's a wild, wild west out here. I'm going to take you through a bunch of the games. And at the end, we're going to have a segment where we just look at the blunders, because it's Blitz. I mean, it's going to be a lot of blunders. So here we go. Kicking things off between Magnus Carlsen and Krzysztof Klimenti. That's how I pronounce his name. I don't know. He's probably pronounced slightly differently. But this was a wild game. This game was a Sicilian, which transposed to almost a French, because Magnus didn't play d4. He played c3. But now Klimenti played d4 himself. That's an interesting move. So now it's going to be very congested in the middle, congested to the point that Magnus just develops, and this pawn, like right here, he's like, yeah, you can have it. I don't need it. You go ahead. And probably his opponent was like, bro, I don't care if you're the world champ. Like, I'm a pawn up. I mean, I don't know the hell this is, or who you think you're playing games with, but I have an extra pawn. Magnus is like, that's great. I'm Magnus Carlsen. Probably what he says on dates too. So like, what are you into? I'm Magnus Carlsen. Oh, okay. H4. When you don't know what to do and you've sacked the pawn in the opening, you might as well push the H pawn to go for the knight on G6. Now this game gets real wild real fast. We got pieces flying from the right, from the left to the right. We got the queen in the middle, and now Magnus is better because it's very difficult for black to defend the D4 pawn and also to develop. So he's trying to go for the development scheme. Magnus fakes out taking this pawn and backs up. And now is just going to play on the structural deficiencies of the black position by playing h5 and bishop g5 and h6. Obviously, you gotta beat your opponent with the h pawn, right? So bishop takes h6, and the congestion of this position is like, I mean, look at this. You got the bishops. I mean, that's how you know this is a blitz game just by looking at this at the board, right? So here we have a very tense moment. So Magnus needs to decide, does he come into f7 now, or does he play king g2, rook h1, and go for this? And he plays king g2, and he loses. He loses on the spot. You know why? Because black can play knight b4. And the point is that if you play bishop f7, which is the whole point to kind of attack this rook and play rook h1, etc., bishop c6, check, and your bishop is hit. And that's it. Like, you lose. You got nothing. Right? So that's a problem. So he plays knight e7 instead. He plays knight to e7 instead, and now here comes bishop f7. Magnus Carlsen does not look back. He takes the rook, gets the queen out of danger, goes down to the c file, goes to the e file. The rooks are about to be activated, and it's time to collect. He forces his opponent to move the pawns forward because they're all bait. Now the d4 pawn falls, the f4 pawn's being pushed, and all the king has to do is sidestep. And when the dust clears off the board, Magnus is just up a rook for a knight with many pawns left. And on move 48, after surviving a little bit of a scare, Magnus Carlsen wins, and with this game, crosses 2,900 blitz. That's a pretty big rating. It's a pretty big rating, all right? I've been 2835 before myself. I know it's a big rating. I've been 2835 in online blitz, and he's 2,900 in over-the-board blitz. However, it was short-lived. What? He lost the very next game to very strong Grandmaster Bartosz Soczko from Poland, who, like, the fans were going nuts because it's in Poland. He lost that game, and then it went from bad to worse because he was looking to bounce back against Vladimir Fedoseev, and Magnus, like, this is right after he lost, right? He just starts going on this initiative in the middle of the board. Look at this knight. Look at everything Magnus is doing. Look at this. He's just marching straight into his opponent's position, right? Like, boom, 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 knight jumping in, locking the structure, knight is going to e7. It's not too shabby of a counterplay over here by Fedoseev, but, you know, it's Magnus doing Magnus things. The knight is on e7. Like, at any moment, Magnus might play for, rook f5, rook h5. Like, this looks absolutely juicy. But black is fast, too. Like, he's got counterplay you can't really underestimate, right? And now, uncharacteristically, Magnus took his foot off the gas. He pumped the brakes. He was like, wait a minute, I don't want to lose d4. So what does Fedoseev do? Gets rid of the knight without even any thought. He's like, all right, that knight is way too strong. And then here comes Act 2 of the entire plot twist of this game. Magnus begins bringing his king, which makes sense. It's the end game. And Fedoseev is still vibing on the queen side. And Magnus walks his king to jail. Like, in the end game, you're supposed to activate your king, right? That's what he does. Except now, his king is in prison. It literally has no moves. It has no moves at all. It's completely paralyzed. And Fedoseev just finds c3 to crack open the queen side and just comes to collect. I mean, the king is, it's mate, basically. You gotta sack the rook. Your bishop is hanging. You take on d5, but now I got rook d2. I got two passed pawns. And Magnus has to resign a couple moves later because the c-pawn is promoting. So he loses 2 games in a row. Magnus had an insane day. I think in his first 11 rounds out of 12, he had no draws. He had 8 wins and 3 losses. So he lost a few games. He lost to Sochko, he lost to Fedoseev, and he lost to Mamedyarov. But we can't just show you games of Magnus Carlsen, which is why I dedicated 5.5 minutes of this recap to him. And now let's move on to some big boys. This is a game between Polish legend and the hometown hero, besides Sochko, young Krzysztof Duda. This was a crazy game. I'm actually going to show you the whole game. I've been jumping into positions, but this one got really wild off the bat. It's in English, Mikenas Karls variation. You got pawns just standing around, like c3, f6. Not the most important thing in the world. Players are developing, the queen's under attack, and now the queen's under attack, and both sides castle. Okay, great. So now what? Knight to e5 by Aranyan. Point is that if you take it, I take the bishop, I win your knight because it's check. Okay, so we can't do that. Let's defend our knight. Knight takes f3, h4. Nice move, very nice move. The point is that the knight can't move because obviously the queen would be taken, and I'm just going to take back on f3. So, you know, and then I'm going to attack you. Except Levon, the absolute lunatic, takes on g5. Oppa. And sacks the queen for 3 pieces. Oppa. Now, who's better? I don't know. They're g4. I don't know who's better. If you watch this game with an eval bar, you know who's better. I'm not gonna tell you who's better. We got rook g1 coming, maybe a checkmate. Rook e8, all the pieces nice and cozy. g5, and Levon's like, yo, I got a mad nice knight on e4. Mad nice, for those of you that aren't aware and can't handle context clues, means my knight is really good. Mad is a New York expression, a popular expression in big cities, at least in America, to indicate that something is very, and nice, in this case, means, you know, very powerful. Bishop takes a2, little vocab lesson for you from the mean streets of New York City. Bishop d6 attacks the rook, and, yeah, I mean, Levon just comes back. Look at this. He won this whole game just by having the knight. It didn't even have to do anything. Speak softly and carry a big stick, and that knight definitely has a big stick. Shout out to, wow, that could have been phrased better. Now, queen to f3, bishop d5, it finally moves, and rook f8, and I mean, yeah, I mean, Levon sacks a queen for some pieces and wins a beautiful game, and Levon is in first place. That's why I showed one of his games, because he has 10 out of 12. Like, what do you, and he's violating the dress code. This dude is a gangster. The FIDE dress code for this tournament is to wear dark colors. This dude was wearing a white shirt with a giant eagle on it. No tuxedo, nothing. No suit, just a white shirt. I'm like, yo, I love this guy. 10 out of 12. Levon in first place after the first day. We obviously have 9 more rounds tomorrow. Next game I would like to show you, jumping into the game between Bassem Amin and Martin Kravtsev. If you haven't heard of either of these guys, that's okay. Before today, I actually didn't know much about Martin Kravtsev. I really didn't. I know about Bassem Amin because he is the African champion. He's also a doctor. Yeah, like, you know how many of those bozos in the World Rapid and Blitz Championships would be unemployed if it wasn't for chess? This dude is a doctor. No disrespect to any of my GMs who are like not good at anything else than chess. But I'm not gonna name names because I don't know all of them. But this dude is a beast, Bassem Amin, and he's crushing this tournament. And Kravtsev was also having a very good day. Very strong Ukrainian GM. I just haven't heard of the guy. It's not disrespectful. There's a lot of players in this tournament. I'm like, oh wow, you know, that's why I love to see it. So. Very interesting positional idea here from Bassem Amin. He goes for light squared bishop versus dark squared bishop battle. Not always a draw, especially if there's more pieces involved. And he starts walking his king over. He starts bringing his knight. We saw the same maneuver by Magnus. And folks, if you just want a useful piece of advice, if there's a bishop about to come and collect the debts of your position, do not put all your pawns on the same color square as that bishop, unless you're forced. And that's what Amin is doing here. He forces this really bad concession by black to bring all the pawns to him, delivered on a silver platter. He orders room service. Bishop takes. You notice, he doesn't do this. He doesn't do this. Opposite colored bishops could be a problem, so instead he invites an endgame of knight versus bishop with this imbalance, and he just brings back and he trades because he's going to collect the next pawn. And the rest of this game is honestly just him winning. He is winning, but he advances the queenside pawns. Everything on the right side of the board has stayed intact, right? He's just nothing. They can't do anything to his position. The pawns just march, and black's not resigning because it's blitz. You never know what's going to happen. Actually does get some counterplay. Admittedly does get some counterplay, because in Blitz anything can happen, but Amin wins this game by actually breaking through on the right side. While Black is stuck here with this terrible knight, notice how he's advanced now on the right side of the board. I did say it stayed still until it had to move, and he wins the game in beautiful fashion by combining two sides of the board, marching up the board. And you want to know something? This guy rated like 2670 Blitz. He's 2700 in Classical, but I don't think his Blitz rating is all that high. Is in clear second. 9.5 out of 12, out of nowhere. He won like 6 out of his last 7 games. Unbelievable run. So I wanted to showcase him. He's an absolute monster. And we're going to see what happens tomorrow. The thing is, there's 9 more games. So even though you're in second place at the end of day 1, you might lose 4 to start day 2. You ain't making it into my recaps. Not that that's like a crowning accomplishment for any GM. But anyway, let's jump over to the ladies' side. We didn't talk about them in the final day of action yesterday because Kostyuk just mowed everybody down in the World Rapid. But there are some super names here. Hampi Konaru, Vaishali from India, Shuvalova, obviously, Kostyuk, Gunina, Goryachkina, and Bibisara Alsubayeva. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, from Kazakhstan, playing against Kostyuk. This is like round 5. And Kostyuk decides here that while her young opponent is talented, Kostyuk is going for the throat, h4. The idea being you want to go kabam, splat, queen h5, etc., rook d3, rook g3. So how is the young talented I am from Kazakhstan going to deal with this? By playing on the complete opposite side of the board with knight to a5. The intention being you want to play knight to b3. Queen e4 threatens mate, g6 stops it. Knight to d2, b5. Black's like, you want to attack me? I ain't scared. Let's go. h5, Juliana Pena style versus Amanda Nunes. Bishop b7. 3 moves on the queen side to deal with an attack on the king side. Why? Most principled way to strike back against a flank attack is in the center. And when you go one side and come back toward the middle, that's what's going to happen, right? So hg, hg, queen g4. Oh! Oh my goodness, knight to e3, she hangs on, no, rook takes d3. And now that I've removed a major part of your attack, yet you've left some pieces behind. Kostyuk a little bit too aggressive, knight e3 is a beautiful counter shot. And after rook f1, I mean, white still has some hopes, but it's gonna be really difficult because you can't move. What are you gonna go knight b1? I mean, come on, let's be serious, right? So b4, she tries to kick the knight out, and the knight says, yeah, sure. But my rook is still here. None of your pieces can take care of my rook. None of them. You try to play knight e4. Another knight jump. Bam! Hits on b4. Bishop, rook collide in the center of the board. I mean, beautiful defense. And she just plays very calmly. I mean, I'm very loudly announcing it, but she played very calmly and ends the game like this. If king h1, doesn't really matter. Knight d3, knight f2. Beautiful game. It's actually the only game I believe that Kostyuk has lost in the World Blitz. She has 7 out of 9. Bibisara has 8 out of 9. After the first 9 rounds. Only person she lost to was Valentina Gunina, very strong Russian GM. Yeah, but Asubayeva, I mean, she's just murdering this event. But again, tomorrow we have 8 more games for them. So we are going to continue with our coverage on the men's side. Parham Maksudlu versus Maxim Vashelagraf. This one, a London system. Mwah! Chef's kiss. It has my blessing. But Parham early on says, you know what? To hell with normal Londons. I'm going to play h4. It's Blitz. Like, what are you going to do? This is Blitz, right? So queen c7, he attacks the knight is defended, the knight jumps to the middle, we have a trade this way, now the knight comes back, he's like, hi, I want this bishop, so, okay, by all means. f6, and now h5 is a fascinating move. Parham's idea is that if MVL takes on e5, he is going to triple his pawns, which is major trash. That is so bad. That's not the Tower of Power. That's, I don't know what the hell that is. So MVL obviously doesn't do that. And now we have h6. So same thing that Magnus did. h4, h5, h6, g6, right? But the thing about this pawn is that it's useful in many endgames. This pawn might be weak. And the king just lacks breathing room. If I can launch a successful attack over there, I'm going to be very happy. So queen to c2, bishop c6, long castles, b5, king b1, a5. Like instant replay. Boom, 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 and Black's like, okay, kabam, kabam, kabam. However, it would have been better if right here MVL went, you know what? At some point, Parham actually could attack me and lock this door. If he locked that door before going on the march, sometimes the best thing to do about the center is to lock it. Shut the door, lock it, then you can go on your attack. Why? Because if you go on an attack like MVL does in this game with b5, a5, and the door is not locked in the center, and you can play pawn takes f6, bad things might be coming to you because your opponent might have opportunities. If rook f6, this might still happen. Bad structure here, very, very bad. But this happens, and now Parham says, who is attacking who? My dear Maxim. Also, give me back my teammate, you bastard. He didn't actually say that because Alireza went from Iran to France. That's the joke. Did you understand that? Fantastic. Let's keep going. H takes g6, queen g6. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that is not mate, but it's close. The queen covers, but there's knight, rook, but black is winning with good defense. Knight g5, rook e8, good move. Gotta bring the rook. Rook h4. And then this rook is coming, h7 is coming, rook f4 is coming. And MVL here fulfills the prophecy of putting 5 pawns like this. I know we have 8 in the beginning of the game, but that's pretty cool. You don't see that very often. Wasn't even the best move. At this point, I think queen e7 was slightly inaccurate, but it's blitz. It doesn't matter. We're just here for fun. And now white is really struggling to find moves. Excuse me. Rook h1 is coming. Apparently, the engine here just says to make a random rook move. Literally. It's like just make a random rook move for your own good. He plays knight h7, which loses on the spot to check. And he resigns. It's over. It's over because after this, it's forced that you have to do that, and then it's mate or you lose your queen. Shocking. I mean, knight h7, knight f7 is crazy. But again, he didn't really have that many moves. So Parham flips the script completely in this game and wins. And wins with knight f7. It's crazy. Wins on the spot. And Parham, ladies and gentlemen, is in 3rd place. Not from this game, but this was one of his many victories. So you got Levon with 10, Bassem Amin with 9.5, and you have 9 points for Parham Maghsoodloo, and then a massive group of people with 8.5 points, including both these guys. Hikaru Nakamura versus Javohir Sindarov. By the way, you replace one guy from Uzbekistan, Nodirbek Abdulsaturov, with another guy. Javohir Sindarov, also super strong player. He was in 1st place for the first handful of rounds. This was a wild game. This was maybe around 10, 11. It was a Benoni, and then Benoni, King's Indian, and Javohir sacked his rook. So this sacrifice is pretty common. I don't know if in this exact position, but basically white has this clump and really struggles to move this bishop anywhere. But a rook is worth more than a bishop. But black obviously gets good dark square fighting chances. Hikaru tries to trade off light squared bishops. Very interesting transfer here of the rook. And for a while, Hikaru was just, very steadily and slowly improving his position. Notice he's just kind of slowly moving forward. This is not a fork, the rook covers, but you still go knight c4 and rook b3, and you're expanding. Make some trades, obviously good for you when you're up material. But Javohir has a good blockade, right? He's got everything nicely blockaded. So what's white gonna do? Well, let's let Hikaru show us. b4, step 1. You have to break on the queen side, right? So the queen side now, there's a very big gamble here by Javohir, completely sacking the c-pawn to try to make sure this rook stays in jail. Not gonna really happen because a few moves later, white is just gonna play b5. So that rook is gonna get broken out. The problem in this position for black is black has made every useful move imaginable. The bishop is perfect, the queen's fine, the rook's fine, and has no more moves. It's only white who is playing. So beautiful technique here by Hikaru, guarding his king, and just expanding on the queen side, right? Queen b1, queen f1, queen b1, b7 falls, that's it. He is in the clear, but not so fast. These dudes from Uzbekistan are not to be underestimated. Queen comes to e3, and there's looming problems. For instance, if you play a6, kabam! And Hikaru gets posterized and ends up on a highlight reel knockout of just getting, mated. He was mated in 6 or 2. It doesn't really matter. So Hikaru's got to be very careful. So what does he do? Rook h8, king g5. Let me get rid of this rook, all right? I can't let this guy play with the rook. Queen c2, no more problems. King goes back to g6. Who said no more problems? I still have an h-pawn. I mean, this dude is fighting with every last breath of air that he has, and he survives. Hikaru plays a7 here, and I suppose had something in mind like this, or to take and play like that, but all of a sudden we have check and queen a7. White has no passed pawn anymore. And it's from +5 to equality. Now we have queen to d1 attacking the pawn. Black has to come and defend it. Very hard to do. Black has to go here, and if check, to go back to h6, so this is not a check. And then if queen takes g4, you have check and it's a draw. If the king tries to run out this way, probably, yeah, you can't. You just block the escape path. So That's so hard to do. Sindarov, after queen d1, has to come forward and then bait rook f5 and then back up. That's impossible. So what does he do instead? He gives a check and he runs away. The problem with running away is you're going to lose that g4 pawn at some point, and now you're lost again. So his counterplay was actually extremely creative, but now Hikaru kind of saves the king in the corner. Notice how everything in this game was played on the light squares? Because how powerful black's sacrifice was. Rook takes e3 early on. So very impressive positional game, tons of counterplay, but Sindarov unable to prevail ultimately, and Hikaru had a very interesting day. He won a game, drew twice, or won 2 and drew once, and then at some point he drew like 6 games in a row. And people were like, the hell's going on? But then he woke up, and my man won 3 of his last 4 and was beating Grishuk in the last game of the day and would have been tied for 3rd, but he is 8.5. So does Magnus Carlsen. So does a guy named Anish Giri. And a lot of players have 8.5 points. But we're going to see. I mean, we're going to see what happens tomorrow. But so far, Levan Naranyan is winning the event with 10 points. But again, it's going to be crazy tomorrow because everybody still has to play everybody. Now, I saved the fun segment for last. If you made it this far, time for your top 5 blunders of the day. Oh, poor Clementi. I didn't even realize that Clementi is going to be featured twice. Clementi here is playing Felix Blöberger. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce it. And he's been torturing his opponent for a while with rook, knight, and bishop versus queen. Either white wins this or it's a draw. If you lose this with white, you should quit chess. So he plays rook to g7, king h5, and at this point, he has to go here and here. He probably can also just play knight f7. So like knight e4, knight f6, rook g5. Like rook g5 is a mate. So at this point, black would need to play queen e3, rook g5, queen g5, knight g5, and the game's over. Like, knight f7, black resigns. Instead, in this position, Clementi plays bishop here. The only thing he has to be careful of in this position, which he's been dealing with for a long time, is checks. The bishop covers the check, so he blunders a perpetual. And by the way, if you're wondering why the guy's not taking the knight, well, he could, but then you have to play this position. So it's not a forced draw. So instead of doing that, yeah, Clementi, 124 moves, he was torturing his opponent. He got the winning position right in front of him. He played bishop f6, blundered a perpetual. Happens. Next, the game between Vaishali and Gunina from the ladies' side. This one was a London, opening not super important. It was one of like mainline Londons. And Vaishali did this interesting idea where you can take on d6 and voice crack, by the way, and then pressure the c5 pawn. So she kind of just puts all her pieces on the queen side to take c5. Very interesting idea. Black's principled response here is to strike back in the center with the move e6, e5. Gunina, though, really didn't like this. She didn't like what was happening. She did not strike back in the center, instead playing knight c8. Now, obviously, the point of knight c8 is that you want to meet cb6 with knight b6. It's an interesting idea, and then you maybe want to get rolling with the pawns. The problem is that white doesn't actually have to take you. So Gunina makes a voluntary retreat, assuming that her opponent is going to take. Her opponent just doesn't take until a5. And now there's a big difference because these knights are a lot less stable when the pawn has been moved up, right? So now knight d4 with the intention of trading probably more pieces than one, although if you do it like this, there is knight c4. So maybe not knight takes d4, maybe c d4, and something like this, just be a pawn up, right? But we have this, knight d4, and here it gets from bad to worse. So Gunina plays a slight inaccuracy. Now Gunina plays rook c8, which loses a piece. Because after knight c6, queen c6, you have this, and you attack the queen and the bishop. So that was a threat. And if you play knight c6 and you try to throw in the in-between move, there is check. There is the check. So you get checked, the queen's guarding, and after king h8, white is just a piece up. Like, white could take on f3, or white can take the rook. It's actually even better to take the rook. Maybe Gunina calculated this in rook e8. Maybe that's what she looked at, but still very good for white. And here, the cherry on top, after knight c8, she takes on e2, and hangs mate in 1. I don't know if this was like a way of resigning. I don't know. I wasn't there. Next game. This one is between Mikhail Kabalya and Anish Giri. So right here, it's been a wild game, but the players begin simplifying. So the queens come off the board, the rooks begin to come off the board, and okay, we're headed for a draw. 2 rooks and a pawn, 2 rooks and a pawn. Not so fast. Not so fast. So, rook e3, rook e3. What is black trying to do? Promote a pawn. What is white trying to do? Either stop that, or you got a pawn of your own, right? So, king c2, king f5, rook e8. All right, rook e8 is fine. I mean, you can also probably play king c3 and push your own pawn, but he plays rook e8 for two reasons. Distance is good, right? And like trying to pressure the pawn. Okay, fantastic. h3. Now, rook h8, self-explanatory, king g4. Now, what does white have to do in this position? Probably push his pawn and the king, right? He's not gonna make it here in time. You gotta go for something like this. King c3, king g3, b4, h2, king c4, king g2, king c5, right? Like something like this. And the only thing you need to make sure that you don't accidentally do is after like something like this, get blocked. That is how you lose this game. Pawn, king, rook, like this. You get blocked, that's it. You're screwed. So Kabalia does neither of those things. He plays king d3. He doesn't help himself push the b pawn, and he decides to come this way. But he gets cut off, so he just loses this. He just loses immediately. It happens. That's why. Yeah, I mean, it's Blitz. I mean, he just one king square. It's kind of instructive. It's, you know, it's good. And then sometimes you, for example, I'm going to give you a little bonus lesson here for hanging around. There's positions like, for example, h2. Let's say you play rook h2, king h2, like king c4. There's all sorts of endgames where this king gets back, and your king has to be on the kind of the correct side of the pawn. So something like, I mean, here you can just push, but like king c5, your king is shouldering this king away. So it's important your king walks up with your king, like king c6, king e5, b6, check, and then here you don't go in front of your pawn. You actually, you shoulder the king. You're like, back up. Right? You can't come closer. Something like that. Okay, now you know. Now, one more game for you. Two more games, actually, sorry. Grishuk versus Rasmus Svane. He was crushing in this event. He was having an absolutely outstanding day. He, in this position, started actually getting some counterplay. Grishuk gambled the pawn in the center. Now here comes f5, f4. Very passive position for black. But here Grishuk played rook b7. The point of rook b7 is that, like, this is just crushing. Because if you take my queen, I make a new one. And if you don't take my queen, I take yours. And Rasmus Svane was like, that's very clever, Alexander. I'm just going to play knight to e7 and not take you at all. The best move here was to guard his knight in the middle. Because Grishuk set up something so disgusting. Knight to e7 loses on the spot to bishop a7, which is a double attack. And if rook b7, cb7, the same problem. Oops. And if you take, I would take with check first. And then I would take the rook. Nasty move, and Grishuk just won himself a horse. So, you know, I would pay money for a Grishuk on a horse photo shoot. That was a beautiful one. And the final blunder of the day, because maybe you clicked off. Maybe people got the results. They're like, I don't want to be in this recap anymore. If you made it 28 minutes, I appreciate you very much. Final game of the day is the game between Alexander Prietke and Magnus Carlsen. Magnus was on a bit of a downturn. This was, I believe, after he lost to Fedorseev. Very close, like right in that area. Complex game, but Prietke, very strong Russian GM, uncorked this savage move. Bishop h6 is a beautiful move. Point is that if you play king takes, there is check and I win back the bishop. And if you play pawn takes, then obviously I'm going to play rook takes f6. And even though Magnus is very temporarily up a pawn, queen f4, queen h4, rook f1, and there is just very, very simple rook takes bishop. Did I say up a pawn? I meant a bishop. And queen g6. Rook e4, queen g6. Wins on the spot. Magnus blunders. I mean, now it's just rook e4, queen g6 here, and you take. And you are one pawn up with mate to come. And Prietke just doesn't, he just plays here. So what does Magnus do? He takes with check, step one, and then he just plays rook d8. And there is no attack. Mate is completely covered, and that's it. And so queen h4, and it gets from bad to worse, because Prietke hangs a queen. Prietke hangs check, and it discovered, I mean, it's just a complete disaster. Just rook e4, queen g6 wins, and Prietke goes from winning to losing to, like, ASAP losing on the spot. And that brings me to the end of the recap for the first day of the World Rapid and Blitz, first of two. Let me know if you enjoyed. Let me know if you like this blunder segment. Let me know if you like the format. You could also let me know if you hated it. I don't care. Folks, appreciate you all very much. I will see you all tomorrow for the final day of top level chess of this year. World Blitz champion will be crowned tomorrow on both the open side and the women's.